It's true that some things change as we get older. But if you're a woman over 40 and you're dealing with insomnia, brain fog, moodiness, and weight gain, you don't have to accept it as just another part of aging. And with MIDI Health, you can get help and stop pushing through it alone. The experts at MIDI understand that all these symptoms can be connected to the hormonal changes that happen around menopause, and MIDI can help you feel more like yourself again. Many healthcare providers aren't trained to treat or even recognize menopause symptoms. MIDI clinicians are menopause experts. They're dedicated to providing safe, effective, FDA-approved solutions for dozens of hormonal symptoms, not just hot flashes. Most importantly, they're covered by insurance. 91% of MIDI patients get relief from symptoms within just 2 months. You deserve to feel great. Book your virtual visit today at joinmidi.com. That's joinmidi.com.
Hello and welcome to the Book Club Review. I'm Kate and this is the podcast about book clubs and the books that get people talking. In a year in which real-world news has been dark and difficult to process, what then do books represent? An escape or a way to engage more deeply with the world around us? A way to practice empathy and have our hearts touched by lives and experiences different to our own, but in a way that allows distance and an opportunity to process and reflect. The books I've read this past year with Book Club, the books I wouldn't necessarily have got to without that nudge to read them, have expanded my horizons and led me to fascinating conversations. The books I've been nudged to read by the critics, by the prize shortlists, by recommendations from friends or people I've encountered online, have formed a reading year of over 100 books, all of which inform the person that I am at this moment in time. All of which to say, at a time when data suggests that people are reading less and finding it harder to focus when they do read, books and reading have never seemed more vital and important. Independent bookshops are a delight and audiobooks are continuing to develop in new and thrilling ways. But my favourite thing, of course, is the way that reading leads me to conversations with friends. And I'm lucky to have two much-loved Book Club Review guests joining me tonight. The mulled wine is brewing, the fairy lights are twinkling, and I'm joined by Phil Chaffee and Sarah Oliver to look back over our favourites from this past year of reading. We're pulling out everything from book club hits to favourite new releases, backlist gems, and most fascinating non-fiction, and boiling it all down to our overall best book we read in 2025. How will we choose? Keep listening to find out. That's all coming up here on the Book Club Review. Phil, Sarah, you join me around the festive coffee table, piled high with books. Laura was due to dial in, but has been laid low by Canadian seasonal flu, so we are sending her love. And with a bit of luck and editing magic, she may yet be included by the time this podcast goes out. But in the here and now, we've got mulled wine, we've got fairy lights. Thank you so much to you both for joining me. Listeners, apart from at the school gates, the other time I see Sarah is at our friend Gary Wigglesworth's books quiz. And we have a minor triumph to celebrate this year. After months and months of coming in at 4th or 5th, at the last quiz in November, we finally managed to snag 3rd place with the help of our author friend Nat Segnet and our other team member Andy Humphreys. I've had a few milestones this year. The pod was in the Waitrose magazine. I was on Radio 5 Live talking about books. But I think coming 3rd in Gary's books quiz was my finest hour. How about you?
It was amazing. It was an amazing moment. Because every other team works in books. I run also, and it's the best feeling in the world to pass someone with more gear than you have.
Right.
And so this is the equivalent.
That made me very happy anyway. Of course, if you're wondering what you win when you come 3rd or 2nd or 1st in Gary's books quiz, it's books. It's more books.
More books.
Of course, it's just what we need. Phil, how was 2025 as a reading year for you? I remember you said last year, I love this. Your intention was to read less in 2025. Did you manage that?
No.
You failed.
I failed, as always. I read a lot.
You need to get a life.
I do.
But in a good way, right? You read some good stuff.
Yeah, I read some great stuff. I read like 220 books was my number.
That is more than last year.
It's more than last year.
Yeah.
It's also, as I was going through the list of books, because I will forget all of them if I don't. I just put them on Goodreads when I'm done, so I remember. And there were 2 or 3 where I was like, wait, I read that and I didn't remember, and I had to like go and then read about the book, and I was like, oh yes, it's all coming back. So I read that many. How many did I actually absorb? I'm not sure. And just with this list of the books we are going to be talking about, I had to go back and be like, who was the characters? Where was this set again? But then my memory is jogged and most of it is there. We'll see.
How about you, Sarah?
Ooh, I have so many ideas. So first off, I love quitting. This is a shout out to quitting. I think it's awesome. I have this new game that I've called in my mind, Ruin It For Me. I've done it with television shows. It's a little harder to do with books, but with TV shows, there was a TV show in particular that everyone was watching, and it's a murder mystery, and I'm 2 episodes deep, and you have to know what happens. And that means 6 more hours of my life have to be devoted to getting that answer. And then I realized I could just go into work, and I picked 2 people who I knew would have different opinions. And I said, hey guys, did you finish it? And they were like, yeah. And I said, ruin it for me. And it was awesome. They tell you the whole thing in 15, 20 minutes. They disagree with each other. So you learn about them. You learn about the show. You get 5 hours, 45 minutes of your life, just yours. And you don't have to do it.
I feel like this needs to be a podcast. You can make it. I'll teach you how to do it.
It's called,
I would love to listen to that.
Yeah, it's awesome. So you could do that with books. I think quitting is great. I quit a lot of books. But unlike you guys, I don't write down what I read. And so just to do this list, this is awful. I went through my text with a friend who we talk about what we read quite a bit. And I just wrote the word read and went through what I had texted with her this year. And that's how so what I'm picking up, only what I discussed with her. So I have no idea with my number. When you were mentioning sci-fi, I was like, oh yeah, I read 2 more sci-fi. But I need to write them down. So I will change my ways. But for now, I have a very limited list of some of what I've read.
I think keeping a note is impossible. This year I did Storygraph, and I made it through to September.
What does Storygraph entail?
It's just, Storygraph. No. It's so great. When Goodreads first started, I didn't use it. According to sort of law I've read, it was really great.
Yeah.
So Storygraph, I think, takes those principles that Goodreads began with,
yeah,
but has remained pure and true to them. And it's completely independent. It's done by this amazing woman, Nadia, and her business partner. Like, the 2 of them do everything, all the coding. It allows you to log your reads, review, star ratings, to share things with others. The recommendations it flags up often will surprise you. It will be things you hadn't heard of before, which, again, I wouldn't associate with Goodreads. And it does this lovely thing where it will spit out these really nice stats and almost tell you about, according to the data you're putting in, the way it then presents the information back to you once you've accumulated a lot is really interesting. And you get these lovely pie charts and things like that. So yeah, it's great. If you don't know it, I recommend trying.
Does it give you your age?
I don't think it does.
Your
Not like
reading
Spotify Wrapped, your reading age, yeah.
That'd be hot.
I was very proud my listening age on Spotify because of my children was 21.
Oh, I'm 70. No, I'm 79. My husband's 70. I made fun of him, and then I opened mine. I'm 79.
My teenage daughter Emmy is 64, so I blame
Amazing.
Stranger Things.
In a moment, we're getting down to the serious business of our best books we read in 2025. But first, let me take a moment to tell you about our episode sponsors, Serious Readers. They make lamps that are precision reading tools designed to bring the full, clear spectrum of natural daylight indoors. As regular listeners will know, I'm a huge fan of my Serious Readers lights. From the moment I started using them, I realised what a difference they made, like I could feel my eyes saying thanks very much. The reason for this is that Serious Readers use their trademark daylight wavelength technology to replicate the full, clear spectrum of daylight, which makes words on the page appear sharper and with better contrast, reducing that feeling of eye strain. And they're recommended by over 500 opticians for that reason. Precision reading lamps are an investment, it's true, but Book Club Review listeners can get the brilliant special offer of £150 off any HD Essential reading light, plus free UK delivery. Treat yourself this Christmas and head to seriousreaders.com/BCR and use the code BCR at checkout. That's Bravo Charlie Romeo. It's completely risk-free with a 30-day home trial. If you don't feel the difference, they'll collect it for free and fully refund you. Right, now we've got our lighting sorted, let's get back to considering our books of the year.
All right, let's start our list with the best new release. What are the best books we read that were published in 2025? Looking through my list, I realised the things that get me reading new releases are prizes. The Women's Prize, the Booker Prize, most of my new release reading seems to come that way. Phil, what books were top of your favourites for 2025?
I embarrassingly have a tie for this category because I couldn't narrow it down enough.
Maybe we can help you choose.
Okay.
Pitch
the
us.
first is actually right in front of me because it's on your list of your something, which is Mother Mary Comes to Me, the Arundhati Roy.
Yeah.
I listened to it, so I kept on hearing how she said her name, and it was not the Arundhati.
Oh,
I'd
interesting.
always said.
Great. Never heard it said out loud, of course.
She is obviously a political and literary titan. She is amazing. It is a memoir. It's also a book about her mother and her relationship with her mother, who started this, by all means, incredible school in Kerala and fought legal battles all the way to the Supreme Court for women's inheritance rights, and was this amazing school teacher, but was also a monstrous mother, very emotionally abusive to both Arundhati and her brother. You also get Arundhati's memoir, her growing up, and her experience in India, and her reflections on India, and her emergence as a public figure, and her interactions with this increasingly fascist government and society. And I just was blown away. I thought it was astonishing from beginning to end. You're nodding. I guess you liked it too.
I'm so glad you brought this up. I did not finish this one. I started it and was completely in awe of how amazing it was. I absolutely loved it. And also, I think if you loved The God of Small Things, which I really did, so much of this, you realise how much in that novel is coming from her own life story and experiences in a way that it's so revealing then about what went into that book, which is such an amazing book. But I got derailed by Booker Prize reads, and then I put it down, and then I just haven't really had a chance to go back to it. So then when I was doing my list, I was like, oh man, I can't talk about Mother Mary Comes to Me because I didn't finish it.
I recommend it. It's worth finishing.
So good.
The other tiebreaker, or tie, was The Silver Book, the new Olivia Laing.
Oh, interesting.
I have not read her. Crudo, I think, was a novel.
Yep.
I have not read it. So this is the first novel of hers I've read, but I've read a bunch of her, what do we even call her books? Essay books?
Autofiction?
Yeah.
That's not a
But they're also
dirty...
intellectual
Yeah.
and wide-ranging.
Yeah.
It's hard to talk about. I don't know what format it is, but I think she's just always brilliant. I love the connections she makes between different artists and thinkers and the stories she finds. I would follow her with anything. This book is a novel about this fictional boy who winds up in Italy in the early 70s and then is found by Danilo Donati, who I had not heard of, but he was the costume and production designer for both Fellini and for Pasolini. And the substance of the book is this boy, they become lovers, and them joins both Salo, the Pasolini production, and Casanova. I have not seen Casanova, and I have never been able to watch Salo, although she makes a good case that Salo... Do you know Salo?
No,
Anything
this is
about
all
it?
not really my... You might though, Sarah. I feel like you're more of a film person. No, even Sarah's shaking her head.
I've heard of it, but I don't know.
Okay, so Salo was Pasolini's final movie, and it was adaptation of 100 Days of Sodom, the Marquis de Sade book. And it is famously very hard to watch. They found all these teenagers,
Oh, God.
and then they've transposed it to the Republic of Salo, which is where Mussolini went in 1944. He was the figurehead of this Nazi regime in northern Italy. And so you have these fascists taking these teenage kids and then sexually torturing them. I have never really wanted to watch it, but it's supposed to be amazing, and there's no movie out there quite like it. So it's about the making of that and the Fellini movie. You get these sense of what the film industry would have been like. There's also all of these literary and artistic references and walk-ons. She's just such a good writer. Really fascinating part of history, and I will go read Crudo soon.
Yeah, I liked Crudo. Read it years ago. It is really good. I keep picking this one up because it's such a beautiful book, isn't it? It's got a gorgeous silver cover.
Yeah.
It's a very beautiful object. Sarah, how about you?
I think I would go with Dream Count. by Chimamanda and Ngoze Adiche. Two things I loved about it was it takes place in New York, London, Nigeria. It's a book that only she could write. It's a book that only somebody who's lived this multinational existence could come up with and have that kind of mind and that kind of exposure. It's a worldly perspective, and that makes it wonderful to listen to. And then central to the novel is the charges against Dominic Strauss-Kahn. And I remember reading about that. I remember when it came out in the news, and I remember thinking immediately, this is clearly an evil man, definitely did it, and he's definitely going to get away with it. And I thought of it as a pivotal moment in my adulthood of the knowledge that justice would definitely not happen in that case. And she explores that case and the issues behind it and around it. And I like that someone did that.
It was making me think when you said about that perspective that she has as an author and bringing that into her work of the Kiran Desai, The Loneliness of Sonia and Sunny, where I thought again, it was very much from the perspective of someone who had this education like her characters where they're not really taught about India, they're not speaking their own language, they're learning English, they're brought up to leave kind of thing. And then sure enough, she then followed her mother to live in New York where she still is, and this multinational perspective, but almost what is lost in that, which I thought she explored so beautifully. And I had that real feeling of so much of her own very particular experience of the world, even though I'm sure there's much of it that there's a lot of people who have similar feeling of their own status and connection with the world because of having almost grown up internationally. But it was so good because it had so much resonance because of that. It was really great. So that was actually one of my contenders for best new release because it's such a wonderful read. It's so immersive. You get this love story, Sonia and Sunny. It's long, it's super long, and it takes a long time to read because it's so full of amazing sentences that you just want to linger over. What is it, 650 pages, something like that? And I would normally expect something like that to take me more than a week, but not 3 weeks, which is what it took me. I was really like, whoa, 2.5 weeks I think it took me, which was a surprise, but I didn't want to rush it. We talked about it quite a lot in the Booker episode, but I didn't think that she managed to really draw the narrative together well enough in the end for it to win the Booker Prize. So that's, I think, what probably counted against it in that evaluation. But as a novel, as something to experience, as a voice to read and luxuriate in and enjoy, and it's so packed with ideas, it's incredible. So for all those reasons, a wonderful book. But top of my list, I've got a choice of two. This is so hard. I've talked about both of them on the pod before, so I'll quickly talk about Heart the Lover by Lily King. This wonderful story. It's a book of two halves. The first half is a campus novel. The main character, Jordan, is young. She's studying English literature. She's got these two incredible male students who are both really stars of the show, and she gets drawn into their orbit and ends up having a romantic relationship with one of them, and the other one's on the sidelines, and then that kind of switches around. So you're very invested in those college relationships and all that emotion, and also that coming of age story, figuring out who she wants to be. And then it jumps forward in time about 20 years, and you meet these three characters again as adults, and now they are dealing with some difficult things: illness, sadness, loss. It's tough, that second half. It's a lot to read because the characters are going through some really difficult stuff, but it also has such a ring of truth to it and looking at illness and death in a way that we tend not to, and she really examines it and draws you very close to it. But because of the way it's so beautifully balanced with that first half and all the lightness and joy that you experience there, I just thought it's so earned, that second half. It's so beautifully set up and it so beautifully holds together, and only a very good novelist could do it. And she is a really good writer and she's very experienced, and it really shows. So all of that came together so beautifully in this novel. It's the sort of book you finish it and you're like, that is what a novel is supposed to do. It really was one of those. But the other one I did want to mention, just almost because it was so enjoyable, is Deep Cuts by Holly Brickley, which I read at the beginning of the year. So I've got that recency bias because it was such a long time ago. But looking back at my list, I was like, oh, I love that so much. So this is almost like more the first half of Lily King. It's a coming-of-age story of a young woman, and she is a student, and she is really into music and the music world, and has this real passion for songs and goes to gigs and sees people play all the time. And she meets this young man who he's a brilliant performer, but the songs that he's performing don't quite have it. And the brilliant thing about this main character is that she knows what it is. She can tell when something is good, and if it's not good, she can figure out how to get it there. So the whole thing between them is this dynamic where she is helping him to improve his songs. Basically, she's helping him turn them into hits. And then his career takes off. But he's not really acknowledging the work she's doing behind the scenes, and she's not really in any way claiming that either. So it's really interesting, this dynamic. And the thing that you absolutely love is this sense of her coming into herself as a person and almost understanding her power and what it is that she's doing. And you just want to cheer in the most wonderful way when she starts to claim that for herself. And it's so rewarding. It's so good. But also, the thing that underpins it all is this wonderful, you can tell, real knowledge of the music world. It would be like if one of us wrote a novel that was set in the books world. All the references would just be, for another reader, they'd know. And this is that, if you know the music world, or even if you don't, even if you have maybe more of a passing familiarity because there was a time in your life where you were really into music, but now, you never get, now your Spotify listening age is 21. But there's such a joy in the references, and it makes you want to go and listen to things again. It makes you want to seek out this stuff. And so it's got that lovely dimension to it too. It was so much fun. It was so brilliantly done. It was, definitely that or Half the Lover. I can't choose, but very different books, but each of them in its own way an absolute joy, and I was so glad that I got to read them. Let us move on to our next category, which is Best Backlist Title. So this is a book published before 2025. Sarah, what's been your favourite backlist title?
Well, all of mine are backlisters. Yeah. I don't know where else we're going to go. I guess I'll go with, for book club, we read Pet Sematary.
That was a lot of fun.
Yeah, and that's a backlister. And that's where I got on my whole, I'm going to go find the cover I want. Because a lot of Stephen King novels, you grew up knowing a cover, and then if you try to read it now, the cover will be whatever new TV adaptation it is. And I don't want that. I don't want that to sully what I think. I want before he sold the rights cover, which I got, and I'm thrilled about.
1983.
Yeah.
Copy of this edition says.
I wish there were a way listeners could see this cover, because
it's the best cover.
It's
just
so classic.
astonishing. Would be great.
Just look up, if you can, just Google right now, Pet Sematary 1983 cover, and you'll see an awesome cat in a spooky house, and it's black with a red cloud.
A very angry cat.
Angry cat. If you're in the UK, you have a stupid cover. It's like a foggy cemetery. It's just not exciting.
Yeah,
but the American cover is great.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And that, because we never really talked about, we talked about it in book club, but as a read,
he's great. Stephen King tells a great story. He's in command the whole time, and it's also probably my genre novel because it's horror. It is, and it starts off with a mundane, and then it's a horrific scene, and then what's coming, and he just keeps building what you know is coming. And to the point where your protagonist and his madness gets there, you're like, yeah, I know what's going to happen, and I get it. And then it's, I think, cathartic. So, yeah, he weaves a great story, and it's a classic. It's a real classic.
I hadn't read Stephen King before. This is my first Stephen King. And I was just like, this is incredible. This is so good. Why is it always like this? But I was like, wow, Stephen King, who knew? I've discovered this little known author and he's amazing. But yeah, and I had thought, I'm not great with horror. That's the reason I've never read any Stephen King. But although this is quite scary, it didn't freak me out, which made me think, actually, you have to figure out what scares you. Turns out I'm not that frightened by animals being buried in cemeteries and the various things that, the various unpleasant things that happen in this book. So I was all right with it. It was fine. But yeah, I think that's the thing. I think check your horror before you read it, just to see if it's something that might be your particular thing that you're afraid of. And if it's not, then you'll probably be fine. Go for it. Phil, how about you? You got anything to top that?
I don't have a cover quite as good. Actually, I'm not sure what cover this was, but I, a month ago, read The Transit of Venus, the Shirley Hazard book, from 1980.
Oh.
Yes, and basically that was the reaction I had 4/5 of the way through.
We did a book club like years ago. I remember being very like, ugh.
I discussed it with Laura's book club because we said, what is everyone reading now? And I was like, I like Shirley Hazard. I'd read her complete short stories earlier this year. But then I was also like, it's slightly turgid. Sometimes it's amazing prose and amazing scenes and characters pop off. And then you're just like, it's a bit of a slog. But then I got to the end, which is really powerful, really well done. And it unlocks the beginning. And it's one of the few times I went back and didn't fully reread the book, but read the first quarter of the book again to figure out what I had missed and what was there. And it just blew me away. And then I was like, oh, wait, it was all planned out. She knew exactly what she was doing. And all of this turgid scene setting was to a very specific purpose and was so emotionally powerful once it all clicked in that I'm not giving anything about the plot, am I?
Yeah.
It's a fairly boring plot. It's these like two Australian sisters who come over in the early 50s to England and then follows their love lives and their lives for the next 30 years. Don't want to say that much more about that, but it is, I thought, really good.
Yeah, I was just looking because I don't remember any of that. So I was like, we read a different Shirley Hazard. But looking at the other titles, I feel like that is the one we did. It wasn't The Great Fire. It wasn't. Maybe it was it could have been The Great Fire. Bay of Noon. Anyway, never mind. I would have said I read this last year, but according to my list, I read it this year. I think I read it in January or February, and this I loved so much. I have talked about it on the pod. I recommended it to people, and then I just forgot about it, but I shouldn't have because it's so great. And this is You Dreamed of Empires by the Mexican author Alvaro Enrique, which is just so much fun. It only came out in 24 and it was a paperback, came out in January. I think that's why I read it. But it's set in 16th century Mexico. It's told over the course of a single day from multiple points of view as Hernan Cortez and his conquistadores head to the city of Tenochtitlan to meet with the emperor and Moctezuma. There's lots of blood, there's lots of death, there's lots of mayhem, but it's all happening just off stage, so it's not difficult to read in the way that I had thought it would be. One of the very funny things about it is the contrast between the supposedly civilized Europeans who are coming in and the people that they're setting out to conquer. The Europeans all stink and have appalling personal hygiene and just awful. They're all just so awful. As compared to this actually incredibly refined, very advanced in many ways, nuanced civilization that, of course, ultimately was undone by this contact. It was very niftily summed up by The Guardian as an Aztec West Wing, and I do think that's a great shorthand pitch. It's funny, immersive, enlightening, it's brilliantly written. It's such a great book. I loved it. And that writing is so pitch perfect and good. Yeah, when I saw it in my reading log, I was like, oh my goodness, yeah, that is better than anything else I read, I think. And it should be on everyone. If you haven't read it, get it on your Christmas list because it's so great. I added this category for the books that has thus far slipped the net, and that's most enjoyable read. It's a nice open category. It could be fiction, it could be non-fiction. What, Phil, would you put in that category?
I would put in Vera or Faith, the new Gary Steingart book.
Ooh, so I discovered him this year.
Really?
When I read Lakeshore.
Which I've not read.
Which is really good.
Okay.
When I was in America. Yeah, tell us more.
He is very fun. He's this Russian-American author who, I don't know, there's probably 6 or 7 novels. I read one 20 years ago, one of the first. I read A Country Friends, which was his COVID novel. And then this one, Vera or Faith, it's set in a near-future dystopia America, which is only mildly more dystopian than current America. It's set somewhere on the probably Upper West Side in New York, told from the perspective of this, I think, 9-year-old, 10-year-old girl who is possibly slightly neurodivergent. She isn't very great at like making friends and reading people emotionally. And she has, Gary Steingart always puts himself in his novels. So he is a buffoonish version of himself. Her father is a buffoonish version of the cipher of Steingart, who edits a super left-wing magazine, but is simultaneously trying to get funding and willing to go very far to the right. She has a mother she's never met, so she has a stepmother named Anne, who she calls Anne Mom, and then she calls her biological mother she's never met Mom. And then this is where it gets slightly, there's a AI chess game that is also like her friend. The family has a self-driving car which has a name. And then there's the sort of the politics outside the house which infiltrate down. There is this constitutional amendment being debated called the 5-3 Amendment, which is basically it would give every American with an ancestor before the Revolutionary War a 5/3 percentage of the vote more than other Americans.
Oh my God.
But because it's like a deeply racist amendment, it would exclude anyone who came over or who was there.
It's a slave.
Or who came over. So it said it would only be for people who were exceptional enough to arrive not in chains.
Excellent.
So it's this deeply
Do you remember the
dark...
3/5 vote?
Yes. So it's a reference to that. This is like in the initial constitutional compromise. I think slaves could have... Was it slaves or formerly enslaved?
They couldn't vote, but they counted as 3/5 of a person.
Yes.
As a representative, your power was somewhat more limited if you were
Right.
representing people of color.
So this is basically
The
this,
opposite.
that, and it's this. It's not far away from where the U.S. is right now.
It's totally there.
But it's also it's this coming of age, this girl figuring out, not really understanding the emotional politics of her family, of the broader world, her own place in it. And it weirdly is powerful by the end. I think I even teared up a bit, but it's also really funny. Like you just laugh throughout. It's just really fun. Steingart is there's not a lot of writers who you reliably go for them for a good time. And I think he's one.
Yeah, I was very happy to discover him and I felt in very safe hands and I really enjoyed. Sure, it was good. Sarah, how about you?
This is most enjoyable.
Yeah.
I did Glorious Exploits
Oh,
by Ferdia Lennon.
yeah.
Just a book that's funny and really dark. That's a good time for me. And I loved the narration. So it takes place in, 400 something BC Sicily. There are hundreds of prisoners of war. They don't know what to do with them. Fencing is expensive, so they put them in a quarry. And they're like, they just die slowly. We're not sure. And two poor, otherwise bored potters decide they're going to put on, is it Medea? Yeah.
It's two plays, right? It's two Euripides plays.
Yeah.
The women of Troy, or the Trojan women, or whatever it is.
Yeah. And they're going to put on this play with them. And, it's just beautiful. There's a lot of death. There's a lot of sadness. There's a lot of beauty. There's a lot of real friendship. It ticks one of my weird boxes, which is it mostly takes place outside.
Almost entirely.
Almost
What
entirely
did you see
outside.
yeah.
Love an outside book. So this does that, and it's funny, and it's written in the style of the author's Irish. He knows his history, his Greek history, but it's written in the style of Irish pub vernacular. So that's what the dialogue sounds like, which takes a tiny bit of getting used to and then is only wonderful throughout. So yeah, really great. And Kate, you have the best cover. Is it American? Is that the American cover?
It's the US cover.
So the US cover it's orange and it has, is this Euripides maybe? It's a Greek, classical statue face. And then it has like googly eyes on the front. Really good time. From the cover, it's a good time.
Yeah. I always mean to do an episode on covers. But stop, because I think, how can we possibly talk about covers on the radio kind of thing? But it's true. If we were evaluating covers, that would be one of my standout covers. It is so brilliant. I love it so much. And yes, I went to the trouble through my friends, the Swedes at Books Please, of importing it from the US. I think I was like scrambling around trying to think, what? I've just talked about books that I really enjoyed. Why did I put this category in? But I remembered it's because I have a book that will otherwise tie for best non-fiction, but which I realised I had such a great time reading it. And this is A Waiter in Paris by Edward Chisholm, which I was given by my sister-in-law after I came back from a trip to Paris, and I was waxing lyrical. Oh, it's so great there, and I haven't been for so long, and it's all really exciting, and I'm so interested in France and French culture. And she's, I've got a few books on my shelf. She lives really near the Amnesty bookshop in Kentish Town, and as a result has a TBR pile that's beyond control. So she said, take this, I got it there and I'm not going to read it. And so I brought it home and I started reading it. I try, if I get something, to read the first chapter. And then usually that's fine. I've read the first chapter, I put it aside, and I find that makes it more likely that I'll go back to it because I feel like I've got to know it a little bit. So anyway, I dutifully read the first chapter of this and then I read the rest because it's so good and it's so immersive from the very first page. So it's his story, his real life story of going post-university. He couldn't really get a job. He got an arts degree and didn't qualify him for anything. So he was struggling to find work. And he went out to Paris because a girlfriend was out there. So he went out to stay with her and was there for a bit, just doing odd jobs, bits and pieces. He doesn't speak very good French. So he's just doing his best to get by. But then she gets a job that's back in the UK. So she leaves. He wants to stay. So he thinks, okay, this is the parting of the ways. But he needs to find a way of paying the rent on his own now. So suddenly the need to get a proper job has become quite acute. And he cannot. He tries so hard to get white-collar jobs and he just can't. And eventually, after much trying and failing, he gets a trial as a sort of, it's not even waiter, it's lower than that. He doesn't quite know. And when we meet him, he is there on his first day. He's been put in this sort of cellar where he's instructed to polish all this cutlery until it shines. And so he's getting on with that. But what he really wants, of course, is to be a waiter and get a proper job. And so this book is really the story of how he manages, by hook or by crook, to convince the people in this restaurant that he can be a waiter on the actual restaurant floor. He's hampered by a lot of things. He doesn't speak much French, and that's done in such a fun way in this book where you get these passages of dialogue that are rendered. And when it's a word or a phrase that he doesn't understand, it's just a blank with a line under it. And so what's really brilliant about this is that at the beginning, when he doesn't speak much French, you get a lot of this. And so you share in his confusion because you just don't know what anyone's saying. But gradually, of course, as the book goes on and he learns French, you get less and less of that. Though even at the end, there are odd things where he just doesn't get it. So that's a really fun device. But also, it's this crazy insight into this very Machiavellian world of power struggles and rivalries, and they're all desperately trying to vie for status, and also just the inner workings of this restaurant are just unbelievable and really make you question eating in any restaurant ever again. So that's all quite eye-opening. So it's just a rollicking story, really well told. It's really fun going with him on this journey, and he knows how to tell it so well. Like, we were talking about Tina Brown the other day and how great she is. We talked about the Vanity Fair diaries and how brilliant she is at storytelling. He's got something of that.
Wow.
He just tells it all with a lot of flair, and it's really fun to read. But the whole thing is underpinned by his interest in George Orwell and George Orwell's book Down and Out in Paris and London, where Orwell went and basically wrote about what it's like to be in Paris, not to have any money, to be struggling to get by, and looked at all the other people who were in the same position, who he was aware of and had access to. And Edward Chisholm, similarly, is way down the bottom of the rung. So he's looking at that. He's looking at what it's like to be someone who's living hand to mouth from shift to shift in this very precarious world without any safety net. And it's just really thoughtfully done. It's beautifully done. And he really uncovers a side of Paris that none of us going there as a tourist and staying in a nice hotel, we'll never see it. But it's just so interesting to see that portrait of Paris and see that side of it and see the people who live and work there in this way. So it's for so many reasons I loved it. I recommended it to people. It's one of those books, people who've read it are like, oh yeah, that's a great book. And I'm like, isn't it? Because it's one of those. So I put that category in basically so I could pick it up because it was a great read. I really enjoyed it and I recommend it heartily. All right, so this whole podcast is about book club books, so I feel like we don't need to spend too much time on this category, but the next one I had is best book club book. So what is the book that we felt made the best book club read, the best conversation? We're in some book clubs together and some book clubs separately, aren't we? Because Phil, you're in Laura's book club, but then I often read what you guys read. So there's a lot of crossover here. So what did you have in mind for that one?
I was actually going to talk about a book I read in a different book group with two authors. And the book is The First Man, the Albert Camus. This was unfinished novel by Camus, who died in 1960, about his... So it's very different from his other novels. It's not as philosophic. It's much more character and description driven. And it's about his parents who are Pied Noir. Pied Noir were the European settlers in northern Africa and Algeria. And it starts with his father coming over in 1913 or so, very poor with his mother in Algeria. It's absolutely gorgeous. Camus could write, which I had not realized, but it also then, it actually reminds me of, who's the French writer who wrote about Morocco?
Leila Slimani.
Right, who also wrote about her parents and grandparents. It's a similar enterprise. This one, because it's unfinished, you get I don't know how far you get through the story he intended, but 3/4 of the way through this book, it becomes the sort of scattered fragments that they've collected, some of which are of him thinking about what might go in and what might not. And it's just absolutely fascinating when you get to that point. It sounds disappointing. It sounds like, why would anyone but a scholar want to read that? But it was actually fascinating to read with the book group because you suddenly dive into his creative process and his inputs. And the fragments are also beautifully written. And it was a magical discussion. It was really fascinating. Everyone loved it, but there's just so much to unpick.
That is a hidden gem. What led you to read that?
Someone was like, I'd always wanted to read it. It wasn't even on my radar.
Yeah, mine,
this book.
Exactly. Just intriguing. That's good to know. Sarah, how about you?
I have a totally out there idea, which happened this year. I swim at the West Reservoir in North London, and like a lot of places, it has not even a little free library. It just has a bookshelf where people go and put books that they've read. And sometimes people, maybe perhaps the theory for us was someone offloaded their dead father's bookshelf. There were, I don't think, less than 30 Robert B. Parker novels. And he wrote, like, when did they take place? I don't know, like the 70s, 80s. He's like a detective.
British?
No, it's American.
Okay.
And there's an amazing picture of the author on the back where he's a bit overweight. He has a black leather jacket and he's walking a dog. Like, it's so cool. But of course, he's like the sexiest, smartest man alive in the book. And the book is like totally him. It's just him fantasizing. They're fun and he's likable. He's a bit sexist, whatever. Anyway,
did you take all 30?
No, what we did was we decided everybody who regularly swims has to take a book. So we didn't read the same book. We all read different Robert B. Parker books, and then we would just, while swimming, intermittently compare notes and be like, did he do this? Did you have this? Did you have this? And it was the weirdest, most disjointed, most fun book club idea. It was a great idea. And it was clearly, it was one person's entire collection. I read one called Walking Shadow, but there were, I don't know, I need to look at the list. There were amazing titles. Oh, and you had to read, I forget, because he had 2 detectives. I can't remember the name of the detective. It was early this year that I read it, but it had to be a so-and-so collection because he switched who his main guy was after a while.
That does sound absolutely brilliant. I like that as an idea. That's not an idea we've come across before for a book club. So brilliant.
Reading different books.
And discussing while in cold water.
Yeah. Exactly. It's immersive in every sense of the word. I feel like this feels very serious compared to that, but I think of all the ones we did for the Patreon book club this year, it's been such a delight reading with that group. We're just now actually picking our books for January and February and March next year. If you're interested in joining us, a little plug for the Patreon, you can join and come talk books with me in person on the last Sunday of every month. I think of all of the books we did, the one that kind of ticked all those boxes of I would never probably have read it left to my own devices, and it was incredibly rewarding, although even while I was reading it, I wouldn't have said I was enjoying it particularly, but that was Richard Flanagan's book, Question 7, which is just such an interesting book from a really excellent writer who is he's lived a long life, he's had a rich career, he's written remarkable books, and this book really felt like almost something, there's a kind of exploratory quality to it because of this idea of this questioning format and a certain kind of openness to it, and it's full of ideas. It does have a sort of plot. It's going back in history. It actually looks at the Hiroshima bomb, the Second World War. It pulls in a bit, almost like Olivia Laing, it pulls in some really interesting threads. You learn about the relationship between H.G. Wells and Rebecca West, and how that affair, almost like butterfly effect, he's making a case that it led to these sort of much larger consequences later on. So it's pulling at all these interesting threads. It's asking really interesting questions. It's philosophical, but it's also great writing. There's some really great moments of storytelling in there, and it's got that resonance because it's drawing on his own biography, his father's story of being a prisoner of war, all of which was explored in his novel, The Narrow Road to the Deep North. It's just a really remarkable book, a book that was written by someone who he thought he had been diagnosed with dementia. And in fact, he had a reprieve. It turned out it wasn't that. But he thought that this was all going to be it for him. And then it turned out it wasn't. And he wrote this book. And so it's just a very interesting work. And it made for really good discussion. It was very layered. And I always think that's really what you want with book club books. You want your onions. You want those books that have got lots of layers. So yeah, that was a really interesting book. And I would recommend to anyone to read it. It's really rewarding. It gives you a lot, that book. Which brings us on to best genre novel or comfort read. The books we turn to for escape. Who wants to go first? Phil?
I was not expecting this to be quite as escapist. Actually, I was. The Count of Monte Cristo.
Oh!
By Alexandre Dumas.
We're doing that as a Patreon read-along next year. Yeah.
It's a fun one.
But it's so long, right? So I'm counting on that.
It is long, but
So
it's also a page turner. It's also, what genre? Every genre. It's
Great.
There's thrillers, there's parlor room skullduggery, there's romances, there's a long revenge arc, there's basically every trope. Think of early Hollywood movies. Every trope you can think of is in this. It's hard to know how much this itself was playing with existing tropes from other things or even from 18th century novels and how much Alexandre Dumas was innovating here, but it is just so fun. It starts with this man who's wrongly imprisoned for years, the Count of Monte Cristo, and then it follows on from there. It starts with the beginning of the 100 Days when Napoleon escapes from Elba in 1815, and then probably goes on 2 or 3 decades beyond that. Goes all over Europe. Just so fun. So escapist, but also it is so different than the world right now. It was just like the absolute delight to plunge into this and swim around. Yeah.
Amazing. Unexpected. I'm glad to hear all of that. Because I was slightly stealing myself. Patrons may have noticed I procrastinated slightly about setting out the schedule. No, we will do it. We will do it. And now I'm looking forward to it. Okay, Sarah, how about you?
So for me, it would be Muybridge by Guy Delisle. I think I'm saying that. I picked it as genre because it's a graphic novel or graphic, whatever. It's graphic. If it's not a novel, it's a biography. The Guardian taglined it as adventurer, horse photographer, killer. Edward Muybridge's extraordinary life told in a comic book. If you haven't read Guy Delisle, you should. He's written, I don't know, maybe this is like the 5th or 6th book of his I've read. His wife works for an NGO and he often ends up in interesting places. So he's written about, he has one called Pyongyang, which is the first one I read, and Burma. And he just goes there and he just writes about his life, and he's hilarious and amazing. And Muybridge is the most fascinating person of all time. Mm-hmm. He is the person who developed stop motion photography. He befriended a crazy, super wealthy man, Stanford. He invented the University of Stanford. He had this theory that horses are completely off the air and that no foot is touching the ground when they are galloping. And painters had gotten it wrong, or there was debate, but it had never been captured. They never had fast enough footage. And so if you see the first sort of video, which is a horse galloping, that's Muybridge. He made that. So the book goes through the history of photography and then into film and then also into his life where he does murder somebody. It's crazy. And it's fascinating and historical and really beautiful and also funny and super interesting. And it will probably take you like an hour to read, which is really cool.
Are all of his books
They're
graphic?
all graphic novels,
Okay.
yeah.
I haven't heard of him at all, so that sounds great. I feel like mine are all a bit lightweight compared to those two. I would flag up the really delightful surprise when we did our books to film episode. And I think it was one of the Patreons who flagged up for me Emma Thompson's Sense and Sensibility diaries, which I then found secondhand and read. And they are such a joy. They are so much fun. If you know that beautiful film with Emma Thompson and Kate Winslet, Hugh Grant, it's such an all-star cast. That is a complete delight. But with this diary of hers, you get the behind the scenes. And if you've ever seen her interviewed or on TV, you know what she's like. She's very frank. She's very funny. She's very caustic. She was the screenwriter on this production and was very intimately involved with the director and producing it and every aspect of the film. So if you're interested in filmmaking and how films get made, it's also a really interesting portrait of that. And she's just great. It's just fun to be alongside her as this gem of a film gets made. So that was a total delight. It's quite short. It's really, really good. I also had a really fun time last spring devouring Jonathan Stroud's Lockwood & Co. novels. There's 5 of them. They're really written for older children. But my friend Trevor of the Mooks and Gripes podcast had recommended them to me. They're very crossover. Adults can enjoy them too. And I was like, great. So I read the first one and I was like, yeah, this is good. And then happily powered on through the next 5. They're actually genuinely quite creepy. They have a fun hook. The idea is that this is a world, almost a slightly Victorian version of London, where ghosts haunt the streets. They are quite threatening. If you're touched by a ghost, you are ghost touched and you die. Adults can't see the ghosts. The only people who can see them are children. So the only people who can fight them, and they can be fought, there are various time-honoured ways of defeating them, like covering them in salt, or they've got various techniques that will work. They can trap these ghosts, Ghostbusters style, and get rid of them. But only children can do it. So it's very interesting, this inversion of the normal roles, because the adults need the children to protect them, and the children are effectively soldiers. But in this case, it's a sort of detective agency as well, because they have to figure out why the ghosts are coming back, what they want. It's got a lot of that kind of almost like that show with the 2 guys going around America in the Impala. Ugh. Anyone who knows it is screaming at this point. Anyway, point is, a lot of that. Supernatural. But the thing is, they're so beautifully written. The interpersonal relationships between the 3 main characters are so brilliant. It's what would be in an adult novel, a romance, but because it's younger kids, it's not there. But the relationship is there. That beautiful tenderness and care they have for each other is there. And it's so beautifully explored. It's lovely. It's absolutely lovely to read. And there's funny side plots going on. There's a skull in a jar that's very caustic and funny. And genuinely, there are almost more than the Stephen King. There are moments where you're really like, oh my God, just creepy, shivers down your spine moments. And actually, because they deal with death and loss, they have this real emotional depth to them. And I just was like, these books are incredible. And they're written for children. They're absolutely amazing. So I recommend to anyone. They are really good. And if you love them, there is also an absolutely brilliant adaptation that was made for Netflix, I think, that was directed by Joe Cornish. And when I watched that, I was blown away by how brilliant that was and what a perfect realization of these very good books that was. It's rare something is done so well, and it was clearly done with such love and care and joy in these brilliant source novels. It was just a delight, a total delight. And I feel like completely underrated, shockingly underrated. But best book of all, and it has to be because I've read these so many times and they were such a brilliant discovery, also came to me via a podcaster friend, is The Unselected Journals of Emma M. Lyon by Beth Brower. Patreons have heard a lot about these books because I keep talking about them, but I'm not sure on the main feed I have talked about them that much. And so these are a series of 8 self-published novels by American Beth Brower, who studied English literature, and they evoke 19th century London, and our main character Emma is coming to London. She's not quite 20 and she's coming to claim her inheritance, which is this house in Primrose Hill that she has inherited from her parents. She's been shipped off. She's been living with some relation who's been quite mean to her for 3 years. She's done with school. She's finally got out of this situation of being a companion, and she's coming to London to claim what's hers. And the only snag is that the house is not empty. It's inhabited by her awful cousin Archibald, who in no way wants to be dispossessed by Emma Lyon. And so he grudgingly allows her to come and live at the house, but he exiles her up to the garret. And this is where the novels begin. She's sitting up there, she's writing her journal, and she's taking stock of her situation. And then things unfold from there. They are just such a joy because you get to know Emma, but you also get to know all the people that she gets to know as she discovers this neighbourhood. It's real world, but it has its quirks. So there are some funny little details. There's a ghost, there's a Roman ghost that wanders around. There's a thing where objects disappear and they turn up in other people's houses. So they're constantly having to interact with each other to try and get these lost possessions. There are various individuals who she gets to know and she forms relationships with. There's a brilliant duke that she has quite a combative relationship with at first, but then that starts to become a friendship. There is a brilliant steal the show character, this vicar, who does his vicar thing, but also just loves poetry, and so will declaim poetry at the sermons and is just such a joy. And then there is the photographer who becomes Emma's tenant. He moves into the little annex of the house next door, thus enabling her to earn a living. And that becomes the potential romantic thread, which is just very absorbing if you like that kind of thing. And who wouldn't? Because it's all so delightful. There's 8 of them with more to come. They are quite a quick read. The first one sort of sets the scene, but doesn't really do more than that. So if you read the first one and underwhelmed, promise me that you'll stick with it and read at least volume 2. And if you're anything like me, you will want to go on. And the more you go on, the more the joy of them unfolds, because it's just being in the world and getting to know all these characters, and they are just a delight, and they are full of literary references. They make you want to read the books that Emma is reading, because you can see how they affect her and they change her as a person. And there's something really inspiring about that. So it's all woven in there. Everyone I've recommended them to, almost without exception, has felt more or less the same as I do. Some people are still on the fence, right, Phil Chaffee?
I read 2 and was like, I could take it or leave it.
You did 2. Importantly, you didn't just read 1.
Yeah.
Like, Kate was like, you can't just read 1. Exactly. I followed the advice.
If Laura were here, she would back me up to the heart. And what is a comfort read? It's something that will really sweep you away and take you to another place and make you happy, because it's just so fun reading about all these characters that you fall in love with and you get to spend all this time with. And these are that. They are that. But they're well written and they have substance to them. They're not light. That's what I really loved about them. The writing is good. They're really good. And that is what I want from a comfort read. So, yes, I recommend them most heartily. And if you read them and enjoy them, let me know, because I always want to hear from people who've enjoyed the Emma and Lion books.
Want to get more from the Book Club Review? Looking for a last-minute present for someone you love who loves books? Join us over on Patreon, where for a small monthly fee, you'll get ad-free listening, extra episodes, and you'll also be part of the Book Club Review community, a fantastic group of readers and listeners who share reviews and recommendations in our chat groups. It's where I get lots of my best tips for what to read next these days. This year, we did a read-along of War and Peace. In 2026, we're going to be tackling The Count of Monte Cristo, helpfully endorsed by Phil in this episode. So come and join us as we read through it week by week. And at the higher membership tier, you can come and talk books live with me in person every month in our book club. It takes place on the last Sunday of the month, with a catch-up recording posted for anyone who couldn't make the live session. Over the past year, we've had some fantastic conversations, and I can't wait to explore the books we're going to be reading in 2026. Head to patreon.com/The Book Club Review for all the details and how to sign up. You could also buy someone gift membership at patreon.com/The Book Club Review/gift. I'll put the link in the show notes. Plenty more of our favourite reads from 2025 still to come, so let's head back to Phil and Sarah and those recommendations.
All right, before we get to the best book of 2025, we must not forget non-fiction, best non-fiction read. I feel like 2025 was a good year for non-fiction.
Yeah.
It just felt, I suppose, a lot of memoirs and things were bubbling up that were really brilliant, but also felt like people were more interested in reading non-fiction. I don't know. It's just seemed to me like, certainly I had a good year reading non-fiction. How about you, Phil Chaffee? What was your favourite?
Yeah, I had tons. Book club books, all sorts. Mine was hard to select, but I would do Shattered Lands by Sam Dalrymple, son of William, if you are familiar. You've read some, right?
So I've read William, right? And it's weird, isn't it? This thing where suddenly these children of people, it's like Hollywood celebrities. Anyway, he's good, is he? Makes me feel old.
I love William Dalrymple, who's written this amazing 4 or 5 books about the relations between British colonialists and the Mughal emperors and the fall of the last Mughal emperor. He also had this amazing history of the British East India Company. His son, very much in his footsteps. This is a history of 20th century South Asia. It's a book of 5 partitions of the British Raj. So he starts in the 1920s, where I think what was the statistic? In 1928, the British Raj had a quarter of the world's population within it. And then the partitions, but that included a lot of the Mideast Gulf, the UAE and Qatar and Oman and all of that were part of the Raj.
That is extraordinary. I didn't know that.
Yeah. So the first partition is talking about them cleaving away from the Raj, and then Burma, and then India and Pakistan. And the final partition is Bangladesh and the 1974 war. There's a lot of history there. There's a lot of enormous historical figures, but there's also tons of great storytelling and tons of these connections, one of which I had no idea about was Hyderabad, which was the largest and wealthiest of the princely states in India and was Muslim and had these very strong ties with all of the Emirates and the Gulf states and was this huge hub of culture and all of this stuff. I had no idea about it. And there's so many great stories, so much amazing history, and history that I feel like we all should probably know a lot better than we do. And Sam Dalrymple, like his father, is a great writer. So it was a great book.
That sounds great. I'm sold. Sarah, how about you?
Mine's not as out there. In fact, it came out this year. I'll say it wrong. I want to say Maurice, but it's Morris in Maryland. An Extraordinary True Story of Shipwreck by Sophie Elmhurst. And it's about a couple. They had set out to sail around the world and ran into a whale, or a whale ran into them. And then were stuck on this life raft for a very long time. And it's the story of their survival. And the only way that they did survive is as a married couple. So it's really the story of this married couple. My husband and I read aloud to each other. So he read it to me. I'd say that's the way you should read this. Have your partner read it to you, or you read it to them, or take turns like we did, because that's what it's about. And it's great. It's great.
Interestingly, it's done absolutely brilliantly in America. I feel like it did well here, but when I was traveling in America, it was everywhere, and it's been on so many best of year lists, and it's just brilliant.
I think it has a different title in America too.
Yeah, like a story of a marriage, maybe it might be something like that.
Yeah, because more of the names are not in the title.
Yeah. Anyway, so it's just brilliant, really. Yeah, it is a great story. Because what is marriage, Sarah, if not being stuck on a life raft?
It's being stuck on a life raft and having to eat sea turtles.
Exactly.
That's what it's all about.
It also sounds like a book that's entirely outdoors.
It's all outdoors.
So
100%. Everything on my list, guys.
No wonder you loved it.
Yeah, no wonder. Of course.
There was one book for me that was a complete standout. And that was a book that I read because it was shortlisted for the Women's Prize for Non-Fiction. And that was Agent Zoe by Claire Mully, the untold story of courageous World War II resistance fighter Elżbieta Szewacka. This is such an extraordinary book. And when I finished it, I was really surprised it didn't win. Although I think Rachel Clark's book that did win, she's also a very fine writer. I think it must have been a close run thing. It's such an extraordinary story because it's little known. This woman and what she did, she was part of the resistance movement in Poland. So when the forces of war swept in, there was this underground movement, and she was absolutely integral to that movement. And particularly because women were so overlooked and so ignored, they were able to move around and to participate in a way that they would almost be able to do things that men couldn't do because they weren't under such scrutiny, and they really took advantage of this. She was so brave. And so she helped establish this intelligence network across Europe. There's an extraordinary account of this epic journey she took to get some secret information to the British command, which is just absolutely hair-raising to read. And so many incredible, lucky escapes. Your heart is in your mouth reading a lot of it. And then she did all these extraordinary things. It's a really fascinating perspective on the Second World War. It was a perspective that I hadn't read before, and I really learned a lot from reading it. And then what was awful was that when she then went back to the liberated Poland, it basically didn't really stay free for long because the communist government took over. And then she was imprisoned and her story was suppressed. No one was allowed to know what she did. And she spent many years in prison. Her story was kept hidden for over 40 years. Claire Mully has told this story, really honoured her and her story. So it's one of those books where you feel so moved by the thing that you're reading, and the fact that someone wrote it all down has held her up so that we can all appreciate how extraordinary she was. I really thought it was wonderful, and I was so pleased I'd read it, because it's not, you wouldn't think, it just looks like military history, right? That's not something I would ever naturally reach for. So I was so glad that I read it, and I really do urge you to seek it out, because it's an incredible book. I loved it. I thought it was really great. Which brings us nicely onto, because it could have been a contender, Book of the Year. Definitely that was on the shortlist for me. But yeah, our overall best book. This is quite an arbitrary thing, is it? How do we say best? How do we say overall best? You might want to define it for yourself.
So I had two that were tied. The Devil Two-Step by Jamie Quattro and Train Dreams by Dennis Johnson. I'm going to go Train Dreams by Dennis Johnson because it's a nugget. It's small and it's perfect for me. It's almost a totally outside. There's like a cabin. It also feels like a dream. I think I read it in one night or two, and it really feels so dreamlike. It takes place out west. A guy works on a train. He's not well off. He's a day laborer, and it's him trying to make ends meet and start a family, and there's wildfires, and there's beautiful forest, and he works in the woods, and they just made a film of it, which looks beautiful. I haven't seen it yet. I don't know if I will. I have the film in my mind. It's just so beautifully described. Dennis Johnson's come up for me a couple times. I can't remember what his other book is. It's quite a thick book. It's about Vietnam War.
Tree of Smoke.
Tree of Smoke. That's it. And now I have to read that because Train Dreams he's just really beautiful. He's a really beautiful writer.
And I don't really know him. I feel like, is he almost like American, like a modern classic author?
Yeah, I think so.
I read some book of short stories by him. He's very, at least those were like laconic and manly man and sort of grifters and up your alley.
He's totally up my alley. I really like him.
All right, Phil, how about you?
I'm going to have a tie again because I just could not down select hard enough. The first is The Director, the Daniel Kalman book.
This has popped up on so many best of
It
lists.
is a pleasure. It is really good. So this book is weirdly another inside the movies book with real life people. It's about G.W. Pabst, who was one of the troika of great Weimar era German directors with F.D. Murnau and Fritz Lang. Pabst was famous for discovering Louise Brooks, but he also worked with Greta Garbo and made some of the best movies in the Weimar era between the wars in Germany. The premise of this book, which happened in real life, is he went to Hollywood, really belly flopped, didn't love it. He didn't speak great English and didn't get along with the studio system. And he then accepted a gig in France that fell apart and then went to go see his mother in Austria. And then the war hit and he was trapped in Nazi-occupied Europe. And then Goebbels pushed him to make films. So he then directed any number of films under the Nazis. So it can get very dark, but it's also really fun. You're on these sets, you're in Hollywood, you're crossing the Atlantic. The characters pop off the page, him and his wife and his son, who then has to join the Hitler Youth. So it's all almost did happen in real life. And it also then philosophically is about making art and the negotiations artists have to make in a monstrous regime, which also feels very modern. But it's just a delight. It's really fun and it's a page turner. It's cinematic while being about cinema. And I just couldn't recommend it enough. The other book I read at the very beginning of this year, came out this year actually, We Do Not Part, the Hong Kong book.
Yeah.
Much, much darker. This book is about this late 40s massacre as part of this uprising, this communist uprising in Jeju Island off the coast of South Korea. And the book is about the protagonist and then her friend who's been making a documentary about that. And the protagonist finding her friend searching for her friend who has this cabin in the countryside in the middle of the huge blizzard in Jeju Island. And then it's also about the massacring. So it goes back and forth between 70 years ago and today. But it's a very wintry book. It's a good wintry read. And it is gorgeous. It has these images, particularly at the end, but throughout the book, that have just been knocking around my brain all year. And it's one of those where you're like, is this poetry? Is this prose? What is this? But it is absolutely heartbreaking and absolutely gorgeous. And yeah, it's just one of these books I did not forget at all, because it's just been so resonant and so powerful. And you can see why the woman won the Nobel.
Yeah, that's another one where I was like, oh yeah, I so want to read that. Been meaning to get to it. Mine is How to End a Story, The Collected Diaries of Helen Garner. I had read volume 1 quite a while ago and been hugely impressed by it. I loved it. So that's before this collected version came out. I had read that separately. And then I'd started to read her fiction. I was just like, oh my God, this writing is so incredible. This woman is amazing. So then I started to read fiction. I read the children's book, and then I read her non-fiction book, This House of Grief, which is about a man who drove his car into a reservoir. His 3 children were in the back, and it's about the trial. Was it deliberate? Was it murder, or was it not? So extraordinarily difficult, dark subject, and you would think it would be really hard to read, but it isn't. And the reason it isn't is because Helen Garner is such an extraordinary writer, and she keeps you at this distance so that it's not devastating. In fact, it's just it's an extraordinary book from an extraordinary writer. But then recently on our diaries show that we did, Lucy Skulls, our guest, was telling me about volumes 2 and 3, and volume 3 in particular was the one that she'd flagged up as the really electric one. And I had this copy of How to End a Story, the collection, on my shelf from when it came out. I had bought it meaning to read more. And so then I skipped volume 2, wanting to get to the one that was... And you know what? She's so right. Volume 3 is everything that volume 1 was. The beautiful writing, her extraordinary capacity for noting things. It's written... These are long, but it's written in this very fragmentary style. So the individual entries are not long. They're little notes, but they're so rich and they're so beautifully written, and they capture so much about her as a person, her openness, her curiosity about the world, her capacity to notice things, observations about social situations, life, family, relationships. It's all in there, but also it's a writer's diary. It's a story of being a writer, being a person in the world, and making art and what that's like. So all of that is fascinating. But the 3rd volume details the breakup of her second marriage. I think it was her second marriage or her 3rd marriage, and his second marriage to the writer Murray Bale. They had found each other in volume 2, which I'm now reading, so you get the backstory of how they got together. But in volume 3, they're married and things are not going well. And you get this absolutely riveting portrait of these 2 writers, these 2 artists living together, influencing each other, trying to carve out space from one another. One of them, Helen Garner, is a writer who's very much of the world, and she needs society. She needs people. She wants to be in the thick of things. Murray Bale is someone who wants absolute seclusion. He wants quiet. He does not want any presence in the house when he's trying to write. And so there's this huge disconnect between them, and very lively areas of conflict. And he doesn't behave well, and there's a lot of that. But she also acknowledges she doesn't behave well. So it's got that brilliant light and shade and nuance to it. It's not clear cut, but ultimately she is a novelist and she's good. And the way this is structured, it's just absolutely electric to read, is the best way I can describe it. It's absolutely brilliant. I couldn't put it down. It's really good. And then you go back and you've got the other volumes if you want those too. It's just really extraordinary. She won the Bailey Gifford Prize. I wondered about Nobel. I wonder if one day it might be her. It feels like that caliber of writing.
I have a question. I read the children's book and did not get on with it at all.
Did you not?
I just felt like I was not getting character or anything, or the prose wasn't resonating. Do you think I would... It sounds amazing. Do you think it's like of a piece with the fiction, or does it feel different?
I think volume 3,
yeah,
you would feel the same about, because there's something extra there. But I think it's...
So what,
what
she's saying is don't read the first 2.
Just read 3.
That was for the other list. This is only... Just read the 3rd.
I would say read volume 3. Yeah. Yeah, it's funny. It's just because... Maybe it's because it's also someone coming to know themselves and saying, this is me, this is who I am, this is how I want to live. But she has to get to that. And you're with her like all the way. So there's just something.
Why does that message resonate with you, Kate?
I don't know. Is it just me? But Lucy loved it too, right?
Yeah.
And it's genuinely revelatory because the book that it turns out Murray Bale was writing during the course of Volume 3 is Eucalyptus, which I read back in the day when it came out, and it is very good. Is it good because of Murray Bale, or is it good because of this interrelationship with Helen Garner, who's extraordinary? And that makes it really fun because you see that and you wonder. So all of that's really interesting if you want to pick apart how two writers may have been. And in turn, I would think she would admit that he probably was influential on her work. So it's really fascinating to unpick some of that. Anyway, I love them. Listeners, if you think they sound like they might be for you, I think you will get a lot out of them too. They are really wonderful, and that's my book of the year. Had to be. Thank you so much for joining me. It's been so fun hearing about all your favourites. Are you familiar with the Icelandic tradition of jólabókaflóð, which is the giving of a book on Christmas Eve, and then they unwrap them and they spend Christmas Eve reading their new books? Have you come across this at all?
You've maybe discussed it on the pod?
Yeah.
It's very
I've heard of it.
valuable.
So they do this lovely thing, and that made me wonder, for jólabókaflóð this year, what is the book that you would like to be curling up with on Christmas Eve? Sarah?
I had it as one of my better two, so I'll talk about The Devil Two-Step by Jamie Quattro. It's about a weirdo zealot hermit who lives in a little shack and paints religious pictures and ends up kidnapping a young woman and their relationship. It's in America, it's in the South, and it just talks about different philosophies and ideas and religion and zealotry happening in America right now. It's beautifully told. It's mostly outside. And two super unlikely characters and how they get on with each other. It's just a great, unique novel with great storytelling. And I think that would be a great way to start the year.
Do you want to curl up and reread that one?
I want someone else, because I already did, so I'd give that to them. Yeah.
Sarah's gift to you this Christmas Eve.
Yeah,
if you're not
absolutely.
reading Helen Garner.
Yeah.
The third book.
The third book. Yeah.
No, to be clear,
It's too heavy for my delicate wrists. I can see it.
Any book of Helen Garner's is extraordinary, but there's something about that third book that's really, yeah. Phil?
I have such a long TBR pile. I would love, I've not read it, to read Wild Thing, the Crudo biography of Paul Gauguin, which is supposed to be astonishing. I don't love Gauguin, but it sounds like he had just an absolutely astonishingly interesting life.
Yeah.
Traveled all over the world, some very problematic bits, which I don't think she skips over. An interesting relationship with Van Gogh. I like reading those type of biographies because it makes me dive back into that art. So, yeah.
I didn't read the Baillie Gifford shortlist last year, but I read all the Kindle samples, and that was one of them. And it's really good. It was really good. And I always meant to go back to it, and I never did. So I'd like to read that too. Mine, I was thinking, is a book that I didn't manage to get to, but I've been saving it. I am lucky enough to have a proof of the new forthcoming Frances Bufford novel, Nonsuch, which is coming out in February. This is set in London at the summer of 1939. London is on the brink of catastrophic war. Iris Hawkins, an ambitious young woman in the stuffy world of city finance, has a chance encounter with Jeff, a technical whiz at the BBC's nascent television unit. What was supposed to be a one night of abandon draws her instead into an adventure of otherworldly pursuit, into a reality where time bends, spirits can be summoned, and history hangs by a thread. Soon there are Nazi planes overhead, but Iris has more to contend with than the terrors of the Blitz. Over the rooftops of burning London, in the twisted passages between past and present, a fascist fanatic is travelling with a gun in her hand, and only Iris can stop her from altering the course of history forever. I love Frances Bufford. I've loved every book he's written. They are so different. I love them all in different ways. And so I have such a pleasing anticipation. I don't think he's going to let me down. He hasn't ever let me down in the past. So I'm really looking forward to getting to this one. And yeah, maybe this will be my Christmas Eve read. Thank you so much to both of you for joining me. We're all slightly destroyed by having so many books, but it's just such a joy to get through them. And yeah, listeners, if you follow up on any of these, I feel pretty sure that you're guaranteed a good read.
That's nearly it for this episode, but wait, there's a part 2 with a restored to health Laura. That will be posted for subscribers over on Patreon, so check the link in the show notes for all the details of how to sign up and listen in as we catch up over her favourites from 2025. That episode will be out just in time for Betwixt Mass, that lovely lull in between Christmas and New Year. You will find all the books mentioned in today's episodes in the show notes, plus the link to the Serious Readers offer page, where you can use the code BCR at checkout and get £150 off any Serious Readers Lite. In January, I'll be back with bibliotherapist Ella Bertu, who has some brilliant ideas for how to work reading into our busy lives, and lots of great recommendations for books to see us through the dark winter months. And we'll be looking ahead to 2026 with our pick of the books we're anticipating and our reading intentions. I'm excited because there's a new bookshop called Funny Weather opening in my neck of the woods, and I can't wait to head over and check them out. Plus a shout out to my favourite local book bar. It's always a joy to drop in there. You are guaranteed not only a brilliant selection of books, but a conversation that will make you feel excited about reading them. Bookshops, books, book clubs, conversations and book podcasts, these are all things that bring me so much joy. Thanks for listening to the Book Club Review and for being a part of this pod that I love to make. If you've enjoyed it, then please help me spread the word. I meet people all the time who have no idea that it exists. I can tell people about it one by one, but I'm a mother of 3 who doesn't get out much. So help me out by telling your bookish friends and sharing on your social media channels. But for now, here's to plans and projects and good things to come. And I wish you all a happy Christmas, happy New Year, and happy book clubbing.